Hello there, Salim Omar here from CPA Marketing Genius, bringing you another amazing episode. We've got a special guest. His name is Jody Grunden. Jody, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Salim, for having me again.
Looking forward to this. Jody was a guest a couple of months back or so in another episode. Be sure to listen to that, view that. And it was so good that I wanted to bring him back and talk about five different areas that we're going to talk about. And the first one, and I want to get Jody's input, his take on what it means. Jody, if you don't know him, he's a CPA. He's owned an accounting firm called Summit CPA that got merged into another company, Anders, a few years back. He brings a very different mindset, a very different approach to accounting, the accounting industry. And he's a pioneer in many different ways. And I want to pick his brain on a few things. So, first one, Jody, value-based pricing.
Mhm.
What does it mean to you when I say those words?
Yeah, value-based pricing. So that means a lot to a lot of people. I mean, Ron Baker has written many books about it, and he's a really a great resource. The way that I've always used it, it's a little different in a lot of respects, but I think it's more towards what Ron is talking about in his latest book. But it's kind of replacing the person. So not necessarily the value that they're getting. It's not like you're going to save them $100,000. I'm going to take a third of it. It's not that. It's truly, hey, what can we do, or what can we replace? And so the way that I look at that is, for instance, virtual CFO services. We're looking at a average client of about 80 to $90,000 ish. So what is that a breakdown? Well, that's a part of a bookkeeper. That's a part of a tax professional. That's a part of a CFO. That's a part of a controller. All these different things kind of add up to what that $80,000 value is, for the client, or 90 or 100 or whatever that might be. Now that's, a lot of people say, well, Jody, that's flat fee. And it's like, yes, it is. However, the difference is that we scale based on the size of the company. So for instance, a $2 million company or $1 million company, they might be paying $50,000 for that same $80,000 service because there's just not as much involvement there.
Mhm.
A $30 million company may be paying $120,000 or $130,000 for that service because now there's more involvement. There's a board of directors. There's, they have different divisions, and we're looking at profit sharing plans, which we're not at a smaller company. So that's how I look at value based. So value based, what I would look at, hey, it's the replacement of something that's creating the value for the client, where they can't go out and hire all those people. So that again, it's that value. But then it's scalable based on the company's size, which makes it different than the flat fee.
Got it. Awesome. Great. Um, Clients, what does it mean?
Clients. So what types of clients do we have? So the clients, when we first started off with clients, and I'm going to talk about clients in a couple different ways. We had really anybody and everybody. So really, if you wanted to be a client of ours, great. We're going to show you our virtual CFO service product, and we're going to really work and really do well in it. And we're going to actually put you in this value-based, subscription-based model, which I didn't really talk a little bit about. But with the value-based, we just simply break it out, and it's unlimited service, and they're getting a fee on a regular weekly basis, and it's they can quit anytime they want. So that's kind of the gist of it, real quick. But with the clients were pretty broad. They were as low as, when we started off, they were probably as low as a couple $100,000 to as high as $1 million. Which
Mm,
now we've grown so much that we can't scale. We can't actually be profitable with a client being under about, I'd say, under $2 million right now. So it has scaled. And so what do those clients look like? Initially they were clients that had just really large tax returns. They were clients that we met with on a regular, on a monthly basis to do write-up work. We took those clients and we actually said, you know what, we're going to spend more time with you. We're going to provide you more service, more value. And with that, here's the weekly fee. And we're gonna go and do more than just simply the financial statement. We're going to show you how to do the forecasting and the KPIs. We're really going to get into that type of stuff. And so as time evolved, clients went from the two to the $400,000 client to the $1 million client, to the $2 million client, and then eventually our average client's around 5 million. And so I would say our clients are as high as 30 million in total revenue, or 300 people if you want to look on the people side. And they range from a lot of different industries. 40% of our client base is in one industry or one niche. And that was intentional. And that was the marketing niche, the creative agency niche. And it wasn't really until we saw growth, because we tried to grow just by offering this virtual CFO concept 20 years ago. Nobody knew what that was. So it was really hard to explain what does virtual
Right.
mean.
Yeah.
But it was slow growth. People didn't really pick up on it. And it wasn't really until we, really went towards that niche that we actually became an expert in a field, that the virtual CFO slash creative agency industry was huge. And so what did that mean though? That meant that 40% of our service, 40% of our clients fell within that. Did we turn away other clients? No, we didn't. We adapted towards those other clients, and we would have had to, otherwise we'd have starved real early. And so 60% of our client bases could be anything else. It could be law firms. It could be
Mm.
care. It could be really whatever. Because we have the basic foundation in place. Yeah, it takes us a little longer to figure out the vernacular and the behind the scenes stuff in the healthcare than it would be if all of our clients were in one industry. But that time is definitely well spent, and especially with AI and all the different resources out there, it's really easy to get brought up to speed on how healthcare talks, how dentists talk, how lawyers talk, how accountants talk, and so forth. And so it's kind of broadened up into where our client base went from creative agencies. Now we're focusing on other verticals such as law and cannabis and trucking and so forth.
Mm.
Then next year we might roll out healthcare as another vertical, or and I think it's important to understand the difference between a concentration in the client base and a vertical. A concentration means you got a lot of clients in that. So you might have a lot of construction companies. Doesn't mean that you're a thought leader in the construction industry. And that's an important distinction there, because a lot of accounting firms post on their websites, yeah, we've got these 5 verticals that we're
Right.
really solid in. And then you'll reach out to them, and they don't have an expert in any of those verticals. They might
Right.
understand the taxes, or they might understand the audit, but none of them can tell you the KPIs or anything
Right.
along with that. And so the thought
Mm.
leader is the key to that. And so when we say, hey, we're going to go into these different verticals, we're establishing thought leaders to really promote up and to really get the word out. Because again, we're not a local CPA firm. We're a national CPA firm that has clients all over the United States and everywhere else. Our employees are spread across the United States as well. And so we can't do the traditional CPA marketing to get our clients.
Mm. Love that. Yeah. I'd like to share my perspective on those two different areas and then
Mhm.
really get your input on
Yeah,
what
for
I'm going to
sure.
say. So with value-based services or value-based pricing, I mean, we've definitely been hearing that word quite a bit in the last 20 years. You mentioned
Mhm.
Ron Baker. He wrote this phenomenal book um, some 20 years back,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, he
You're
did.
right.
Mhm.
And and he talked a lot about it. And then we've been hearing this term in various different ways. For me, value-based pricing is, creating value. And the way we create value is in the eye of the beholder.
Mhm.
And we got to know who the beholder is and what are their concerns, what are their challenges, what are their aspirations, what is their vision. So I turn it upside down where it becomes about the person I'm talking to.
Yep.
And only then, once we know what their goals are, is when we can create a services plan that is value based. It's value based because it helps this guy solve the problems that they are facing, whatever that may be: growth, profit, paying too much in taxes, whatever
Yep.
that is. But this service package is super aligned to this person getting the results they want. And when I use this approach in a sales process, it does wonders because the prospect is going to say, "Man, you really understand me.
Mhm.
You're talking about, this is what I want." And there's nothing, a sales conversation going like that is there's nothing better than that,
Yeah.
right? And
100%.
so that's value based for me. It's creating that value for that person.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you and your take on that. And because when we lose clients, it's really easy to say, oh, we lost them because of price or we
Mhm.
lost them because of this. And it's really no, you lose clients because you're not providing the value
Mm,
client really, really wants.
yeah.
And that's where we kind of get fumbled upon it, because we've lost clients. And everybody's loses clients, right? And with that, it's really easy to say, oh, it's because of this, this, and this, and it's like no, it's really because of the value that you created. For the most part, there are the rare occasions like when the client sells, it merges up or something like that. That's obviously different. Or if they go out of business, that's obviously different too. But for the most part, it's that value. And you're right, it goes right from that sales process. And
Mm,
client should, or the prospect should leave your sales process with a good feeling, whether they went with you or not. The feeling is, wow, they were super transparent. They understood me. They knew my vernacular. They knew me, like you're saying there.
mm,
And it could come down to, what, not right now, or it could come up with whatever, but they should leave that thinking, wow, that's a solid company. That's Salim. He's right on. Great guy.
mm,
We're going to definitely go with him 6 months from now or a month from now or whatever that
mm,
might be. And I think
mm.
that's really the big difference, like you're mentioning.
Yeah, yeah. In my perspective on clients is delivering what we say we're gonna do. Do what we say we're gonna do. It's
Hmm.
simply that, right? Sales process makes promises, and having the clients and keeping them is delivering on the promises that were made. And I think
Hmm.
in our profession, there's many times that doesn't happen where
Right.
there's promises being made. Yeah, I'm going to help you with cash flow. I'm going to help you with your double your profits. Like, no, you can't. You don't know enough about that business. You can't make such promises. Just be careful about choose your words wisely. Talk
Yep.
about profits, but don't make claims like that. To do that, but meet with the client regularly, talk about profit, talk
Hmm.
about their ideas, give them ideas about what others are doing in terms of your clients and so forth. So for me, I think clients is delivering what we say we're going to deliver and listening to them. Like those are the two things that come to my mind to describe, clients as a kind of as a definition.
Yeah. So, Slim, how do you deal with the situation where the client then turns that on you and says, well, you're ahead of everything. Why did, it's your fault that I'm doing poorly in this area. Especially if you're the advisor for the client. How do you turn that around? Because it's very rarely the accountant's fault. It's typically a sales issue or something outside our production issue. Very rarely an accountant's fault, but it seems like we get the blame a lot of times for the client's poor decision making, I guess.
Hmm.
How do you prevent that from being part of that discussion?
I mean, I think it then goes to leadership, meaning that's not a good client. There's a finger pointer. This
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
client that's not taking ownership. So I'm like questioning their leadership, their cultural values, their guiding principles, right? I don't want that client. If you're going to point fingers, you're not right for me.
Yeah.
Like,
How do you
we're in
identify
this
that?
together. We're going to think this
Yeah.
together. We're going to collaborate. I'm going to bring my energy and my insights and all that. You're going to do your part. We're going to do our best as a partner. And
Mhm.
then that's it, right?
But how do you identify that early? Because a lot of times you don't really identify that till things go bad, right?
Hmm.
When things are going well, it's like everything's going well, no issues at all. As soon as things go bad, then boom, it's your fault. So is there any way that you've identified clients like that beforehand? Because I would love to let those clients go way before
Hmm.
I would, be in a situation where we get blamed for their issues.
Right. Yeah. We've gotten better at identifying these sooner than later, but they are ones that will slip through and they'll
Mhm.
become clients.
Yep.
But then the goal is let's get them out as quickly as we can
Right.
because they're not the right fit.
Hmm. And if you let a lot of clients go because of that, or you think you're pretty solid on the prospecting side to where that doesn't happen?
Yeah. Pretty solid. On the prospecting side, on the marketing side, the brand, straight talk, straightforward, no
Hmm.
BS. We just say it how it is, transparent. Like all these words is how we're describing,
Hmm.
who we are. So we are right for down to earth folks that are super growth minded. They want to grow their business. They're looking for a partner, a CPA partner that's going to be with them through this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that that works. That works in the marketing sales process,
Mm-hmm.
and that works to keep them on as clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I see a lot of accounting firms, they kind of use that as the reason why they're slow to get in. Hey, I what if my advice, my silver bullet that I'm giving them, what if they, am I crossing a boundary? Because that they could then come back on me and say that, hey, my advice, cause them to do XYZ type of thing. And I wonder, and it sounds like from what your experience and also from mine, actually, that's a very rare situation where you get that one or two. I could say last year we probably let go one or two clients and we picked up 40,
Mm.
so it's like a really small percentage of clients, I think, that fall in that category.
And then it's execution, right? Advice is advice, and then it's how are they going to execute it? How well are they going to execute it? And that can make a big difference
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for
in
sure.
getting the results.
Yep.
Jody, moving on. I'm joking.
Yep.
Team. What's important when it comes to building a superstar team?
Yeah, that's a great question because we've had from the very beginning, I'd say our team has been super solid, and it wasn't recently until we merged did it really kind of the head really came back up and said, wow, but now we've got to be super intentional because now we've got two different cultures combined. How are we going to create that, that awesome team that we had before? And transparency has always been a big thing, and trust has always been a big thing. So transparency meaning, we share everything from how we pay, how we compensate our team to, our financials. They know exactly how we're doing. We give them everything so that they can make an informed decision. They can come to us with questions and we can work it out. So they're not thinking that we're hiding things from them. They know that the transparency is there. And I think that builds really into trust. And trust is like probably the number one thing I think that really helps develop a team because when you're fully remote like we are, we've got, I'm not sure where we're at right now. We're probably at about 90 folks worldwide and 75 in the United States, somewhere in that ballpark. Trust is important when you're fully remote. I mean, it just is. I mean,
Mm,
we're not hall monitors. We don't look and see when you log in and log out. We really don't care.
mm,
We're looking for results. We're looking for you to have things done timely, things done with quality. Those are the things
mm,
that we're looking at all the time, not if you're there at five o'clock or 4:59 or whatever that might be. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits from, yeah, I'd say from when we started is that trust factor has always been there. And when combining a couple groups, that trust factor kind of erodes a little bit. And so that's what our challenge is today is to building that trust factor back from not just our remote team, but for our St. Louis team as well, so that both teams can now work together, trust each other, and rely upon each other and not push things off, not point fingers like you're talking about with
mm,
clients, not none of that. And I think
mm,
that's important. And I think that's really kind of developing the culture. So trust, I would say, is the big foundation for everything. Transparency is how we get there. Just the fact that, hey, they come to me and how much do you, I've had people ask me how much you make. And it's like a lot of partners would say, well, that's none of your business. Or they give them a range or something like that. And it's like, well, here's how much I make. Here's what our firm is doing.
mm.
Because what happens is if they don't hear that stuff, they don't know that stuff. They start making these stories up in their head,
Right.
and then all of a
Yes.
sudden, your firm's going out of business, and it's like, no, we're doing really well actually.
Right.
It's like, where did that
Yeah.
come from? Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's like, and I'm super curious on what your team concept is because I know that your team is super spread out, kind of like ours, and has always been that way. And so super interesting to hear your comment on that.
I mean, so leadership, I think, plays a role, and that's me.
Yep.
You got to walk the talk, right, and walk the walk, right? So that's challenging. Knowing, I'm being watched, people are listening and saying, I wonder what Salim's, how he shows up, right? So I think the leadership has to show up in a certain way. It's important, influencing others. That's what leadership is.
Hmm.
Just constant communication. The word communication, I feel, doing the art of communication, having good, strong communication, frequent communication, meaningful communication, that is important.
Hmm.
Regularly schedule meetings and
Hmm.
having meetings that are fun as well. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be all about problems and all that kind of stuff. Who enjoys that?
Hmm.
Let's start
Yeah.
talking about wins. Like, what did we enjoy, or what are we happy about? What are we personal or business, right? So we start our meetings with that, and people actually they're like, "This is my win." They're ready, they're prepared, they want to do it.
Yep.
They're anxious to share it. And that's all I think part of building a culture, And I
Yeah.
think in our industry, that has disappeared. People are islands, and wow, what a mistake and what a loss to have smart people that are not talking to each other.
Yeah.
Right?
I 100% agree. I mean, team meetings, just like you mentioned, like our team meeting today, we had, I don't know, 70 people on the Zoom call. And we didn't talk anything about business. I
Mm,
guess we did have an announcement. The next week we're gonna have a 90-minute meeting because we're going over some structural changes. That was really all we talked about. And then outside of that, we had a joke to start the day off. We had
yeah,
one of the team members, say some funny jokes. It was pretty funny. And then we had a fun fact. Another
yeah,
person, gave some fun facts about some holidays. And then we had a
yeah,
topic, and then that topic was charity, charitable events. Hey, who's everybody, giving their time or their money to, this year? Then, out of that, we'd have people just, randomly say, hey, they wave their hand and they're talking about that. And it had
yeah,
nothing to do with work,
yeah,
and I think that's huge. The last week's topic was about movies. What's your favorite movie and why? And that was like binge
yeah,
watching. And so all that kind of
yeah,
stuff was super important. And I think, seem more so for probably your firm and my firm, because we're fully remote, that they don't get a chance to hang out at the water cooler to find out what people's
mm,
interests are. And so this gives us a better idea.
yeah,
Had it not been for like meetings like that, I would never know that Jamie coaches three basketball teams and his kids on
right,
one of them. The other
right,
two, I wouldn't know about
right,
someone going skiing, and
yeah,
that kind of stuff is where you really start developing that friendship from work.
mm, mm,
Even the fact that you can't, you're not with them, you're finding common interests. Like, oh man, I like coaching too. And so now Jamie and I have a common
yeah,
interest there we can talk
yeah,
about outside
yeah,
of work,
yeah,
or skiing or whatever that might be. And I think,
yeah,
like you're saying, I think that's super important, and that helps the culture completely, because like they say, people leave if they don't have a friend at work. And
mm,
it's
mm,
easier to have a friend at work when you're there
yeah,
right next beside them.
yeah,
You're fully remote, it's tougher. And so you
yeah, yeah.
deliver.
Now, I know you guys used to have retreats a couple of times, I believe, a year,
Yep.
and then COVID happened. And I
Yep.
haven't asked you this. Are you guys doing retreats and
Yeah,
all of
we
that?
are. So we found that retreats were super important, and I wish I could have invented it, but we had a client that was one of the first companies in the world to be fully remote. We learned a lot from that client, and with that, the one of the biggest things they did is they had retreats, and with retreats, you're gonna spend some money on retreats. The
Yeah,
money that you're spending on retreats is really kind of offsets the money you're not spending on facility costs. It's kind of how we look at it, and with that. People enjoy coming to the retreats. And so the big thing there is we have them twice a year. We have one that's offsite completely, and I say offsite because we merged with a bigger accounting firm in St. Louis, and the other one is on site. So it's actually in
mm,
St. Louis, and so it's a little different dynamic there. But the offsite we're having in Vegas this year, we'll have 90 folks roughly in Vegas, and with that, it starts off with, mixing and mingling, dinners, where we break people up. We force them to be in groups that they don't know who their people, who's in there. And again, it forces them to meet
yeah,
people outside of their little
yeah,
bubble. Because, if like anytime you're ever fully remote, your team is really only as big as the people you work with. And so if you could have 1,000-person team, but if you're only working with 5 people, it's a 5-person team. It's a 5-person
yeah,
company. And what those retreats do, they introduce yourself to other people
right.
and it force you. So we do that 8 people. dinners where they're randomly picking people. And then we do workshopping throughout the day. We usually start at about 10 o'clock, and that gives people a chance to hang out at night and not have to come in at
Hmm.
7 o'clock with their eyes all bloodshot and stuff. And so we do that purposely at 10 o'clock breakfast, 11 o'clock meeting starts. And then 5 o'clock is when we work through. And with our with our the topics we talk about, they're not, hey, what's the latest and greatest gap thing or tax law, or we don't talk about that stuff. It's more soft skills. Hey, how do you
Hmm.
handle a tough conversation with a client? How do you handle this? So we'll bring in people that are experts in the field that will talk about it, and then we've got people internally that are experts in the field that can talk about it as well. And it may be, hey, what's the best way to handle these 5 meetings? Hey, because one's a revenue rec meeting. How do you handle that with the client? How do you handle
Hmm.
this? So we're talking about things that
Hmm.
aren't
Hmm.
typically, I'd say accounting related, but more so
Hmm.
soft
Hmm.
skills. And
Hmm.
and and the idea is that you want the people, the team, to want to come to these events. We very rarely, like we've got 90 people. I think there's gonna be 3 people that can't make it. One of them is pregnant, and one of them is
Hmm.
about to have a kid. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, those folks, that's the
Right.
kind of the dynamics you want
Right.
people to actually.
Yeah. That says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you got to have some fun in there. And it's like we're gonna
Yeah.
do like a
Yeah.
pool party, rent out one of the pools at one of the casinos, and we'll have a pretty cool looking pool party. And we're gonna go to one of the shows, one of the Cirque du Soleil shows another night, and just kind of really so they
Yeah.
can let their guard down,
Yeah.
have fun, hang out with people. And then we typically have where they all come back together at the end of the day, where we have like maybe an open bar. And so if people can then come back and they don't have to gamble or anything like that, because we're going to Vegas. So they don't have to gamble or whatever. They can hang out with everybody on a casual setting. And so the idea is just kind of that rinse and repeat.
Hmm.
And the key there is also is we don't invite spouses. So no spouses. So again, it forces everybody to hang out with each other,
Hmm.
feel obligated to go back to their room and hang out with their spouse.
Okay.
But we do allow spouses on the very last day. And so we usually go to a nice place like a Nashville or, Phoenix, Arizona or whatever. And
Yeah.
last day we whatever event we're doing, spouses are invited. And if they want to extend then over the weekend, they can do that at
Right.
not our cost, but our costs that we get from the different hotels, like our rates, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so what that does, it brings the spouses involved, and we usually get probably, I'd say 15 to 20% of the spouses will be there on the last day. They
Hmm.
can see that they get a chance to mix and mingle with the people they're working with, and it's a really a fun thing. But we did do that only once a year prior to the pandemic, and we saw that we started losing people about 6 months to 8 months into it, where they really just started getting disconnected. And then during the
Hmm.
pandemic, where we had 18 months roughly that we didn't have a retreat, we actually
Hmm.
started getting churn that we'd never seen before.
Wow.
People were
No
leaving
kidding.
because they just didn't have that bonding. And so we went back to, hey,
Yeah.
we're having our retreats once every 6 months. And with that again, one completely off site, and the other in St. Louis, where we
Right.
can do it a little cheaper because not everybody's flying in, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then the same thing is that but again, the key there with the St. Louis folks, they've got to be in the same hotel. They can't go home,
I see.
so it's a
Got
little
it.
harder to
Yeah.
manage. But
Right.
they're out their family obligations have got to stop at that point while they're at the retreat, so they can focus on the team and so forth. And so 2 times a year we find is perfect. It'd be
For
great
your,
more
the
often.
90 people is from Summit. That's right. It's from your
Yeah.
former
Yeah, so
company.
we've got before Summit we had 55-ish people when we did the merger,
Okay.
and Anders has a lot. They have like 350 people, but in their department at that time, in the department though they had 15. And so if you combine the 15 folks they had in their cast department plus the 55, that's 70.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got another 20 folks that are abroad, Mexico, Canada, India, and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, Philippines, kind of spread out all over the place. Now the contractors, the folks that are spread out too far, we don't require them to be there. Um, and one thing that we're going to start, we were going to do prior to pandemic, is we're actually going to make a trip to their location as opposed to them coming to us. We've
Mm-hmm.
not done it, but we have not done it yet. But that was something that we were actually had scheduled, and actually the day before the border shut down was when we were going to leave. So it was just timing wise, it was like, well, that didn't
Mm-hmm.
work. But I think that's important that those folks feel part of the team as well.
Yeah, yeah. Man, Jody, as usual, this is amazing, man. And I see the clock, it's like we've got a couple minutes left. And I want to cover one more topic before we
Sure.
finish off, and that's exit.
Yeah.
As we all know, the CPA firm owners not getting any younger.
Hmm.
We've been at it for many years. And what's your advice to somebody who's been doing it for a while and they're like, man, they're thinking about retirement and they know they can't do this forever.
Hmm.
What's your advice for them?
Yeah, that's great because I just recently have gone through this. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you would ask me or had an interview with me. There was no way I'd ever merge, sell, anything like that. Had no interest in it. Things are going so well. I thought, hey, I could probably be a passive owner of this firm and take a dividend. I'd be perfectly fine. But I did get approached, and and I think the key was that when I was not interested, I made up my list. Here are the 5 things that
Hmm.
have got to happen before I'd even consider it. And I hung to them, and we had folks, oh geez, we had large CPA firms, top 20 CPA firms. Right, a few of them call and say, "Hey, we'd like to acquire you," and it's like,
Hmm.
"Great, well, here are the 5 things." They're like, "Nah, not interested." I'm like, perfect,
Hmm.
you aren't made for me. We're not
Right.
we're not a match there. And it
Yeah.
really wasn't until someone come up to us and said, "Yeah, definitely. Hey, let's do it. I'm cool with your requirements there, and and we'll go from there." And the other thing was that I had a dollar amount I wanted to sell. So not just those 5 things, but it was like I didn't want to sell till we were at 20 million. And at the time we were at 10 million. That was 2 years ago. Now we're going to be closer to 15. And with that, it was like, well, 20 million, I thought, hey, that's where people really want to buy, and so forth. And so it wasn't until we put the deal together with Anders that they made it so that when we exit at year, at 20 million is kind of what the target was. We're going to make the same amount of money that if we would have exited at 10 million. It just through the way that the buyout worked. And I thought, well, that makes sense. We're not losing anything just from time, and we got the security
Mm.
blanket. And so it worked out really well for us. But I would definitely say the key there is you've got to have like-minded company that you're merging with. Andrew's super progressive in a lot of things that they do, but again, maybe not so much so in everything they do, which, with the value base, not billing by the hour, a lot of those little bitty things, add up a
Mm.
lot of times. And so, not focusing on utilization and average bill rate. We don't even talk about that. That's not even a KPI that we use, with our firm. And so again, the key is having that like-minded. And so, like Salim, if you and I were talking earlier, if you and I were getting together, it'd be an easy,
Mm.
as easy as it's going to be, merger type of thing, because we're
Mm.
like-minded in a lot of things.
Mm.
The way that we
Mm.
market's the same way. The way that we work with our team. The fact that we've got a team that's spread all across the world. Those are some of the factors that that could really put a division in a merger. And so I would say like-minded companies, like-minded people. The fact that just kind of throw it in there, the individual that we interviewed with that was looking to acquire us, the managing partner and our advisory partner. I put in the clause that if either one of them leave, I've got an exit strategy. I have the option of getting out, voiding the contract at
Mm.
where it's at, and getting an early payout. And I did that because it's like, well, I didn't want somebody else coming in there with different values, different ideas, different
Mm.
concepts that I'd have to be battling with. And I didn't want to battle. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to work together and really kind of grow and promote each other. And so like-minded is huge. Like I said, you
Mm.
would have no problem with it. There's
Mm.
probably a handful of other folks I would say, yeah, this is great. If
Mm.
you wanted to merge, I'm there. But there's probably 90% of them I would say, no way, stay away.
Right.
Because
Right.
so I would say the keys, kind of wrapping up, the keys would be, it's create your 5 things. It could be
Mm.
salary, it could be a buyout, it could be the way that your structure is worked with your directors. It could be how you pay your team. Marketing, how your marketing is done. Whatever those 5 things are, don't get crazy and create 20, because then you're going to
Mm.
find a merging partner. But create 5 things that you think, hey, these 5 things have got to be, and do it when you don't need to do it, which is the best time to do it, because you're thinking without emotion. and
Mm,
and then stick to your guns.
mm,
Look for the partner that can satisfy those different areas. And I think that alone should man get the multiple you want, and but the best satisfaction that you want, when you're creating that
mm.
exit strategy.
Awesome. Jody, awesome call, man. Thank you for all the wisdom you shared. Appreciate it. And I think we got to do one more in a couple of months or something. Maybe talk about client growth and
Yeah,
marketing
I'd love
and
to for sure.
outsourcing. We didn't even go there. So
Yeah, I'd love to,
that's a
Salim.
couple of topics for the next one. All right.
Sounds great.
Thanks, man. You take care.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Bye.